Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of My Name is Dad. I am your host, Brandon Benson, and welcome. All right, before we get started here, let's talk about the sponsor, which is myself, Point B Grading and Turfcrafts Maintenance, LLC. And we're in the Phoenix area, Arizona, and we do a lot of laser grading of baseball fields, softball fields, backyards, driveways, stuff like that. So I've actually done quite a few house pads lately. So if you got any landscaping, laser grading needs, just grading in general, let me know. See if I can help out in your project. If you got any other landscape contracting things, irrigation or plant and seed or just some general questions, whatever, let me know and see if I can help you out. All right. Welcome back. I think this is going to be part 6 of the multi-part series of Who Am I? And this one maybe gets a little bit darker. We'll kind of see how it goes. But I think where we left off was 9/11 just happened, and I was a little bit worried about getting drafted and having to go to war. I didn't really want to. Like I said, I'd rather stay home and party and not have to do that stuff. But I had the job at the Metro 4, the Metro 4 cinemas. I started as an usher, quickly got promoted or was trained to projectionist. So basically, back then, the movies came on film. Like they were like on rolls. It would look like, your negatives that you would get when you develop film and everything. And you would they would come in these cans, and they would come in probably like, maybe like 15 to 20 minute size rolls. And then you would have to tape them together onto one big one. At least that's how we did it at the Metro 4. And then you would have to, every time you wanted to play the movie, you would have to feed it through the projector. And I could probably still do it to this day. I could run up there and zip it around and do this. Everything's probably all digital DVDs now. But back then it was film. So I quickly learned how to do that and, got promoted and got a little extra money and that kind of stuff. And now the Metro 4, I talked a little bit about it. It was an old building. It was downtown Hanford. It was next to the Keller's auto dealership. And there was always a bunch of jokes about the Metro 4 that the Metro 4 was haunted. And we used to, and the stock room where we used to keep like all the cups and popcorn bags and all the supplies and stuff was upstairs. And upstairs is dark. It's like super dark. And it was way down at the end of the theater. And even like, it was like the oldest part of the building. This is like a brick building too. So, and you would go in there, and if the wind was blowing, there were like holes and like a couple of bricks missing. So you could hear like the wind whistling, and so we would send like new people up there, and then you could go into the restroom, and you could like take a broom and you start hitting the roof. And then the people in there would get all scared. They heard something knocking. Oh my God. So that was always a lot of fun. So I had my job at the Metro 4. I don't even remember what minimum wage was then. Might have been like $6.75 or $6.25. I don't remember. I remember when I started working there that the minimum wage did go up pretty quick. It went up to $7.50 or whatever. But then, so I moved out of my parents' house, and I'll tell this kind of story. So my mom found this place that was, sort of out towards their house, but it was along the Highway 41. And it was a mobile home, a manufactured home. And apparently the guy who had bought this place was going to go become a correctional officer. And he is like, I'm leaving in like 3 months. I'm going to be gone for 6 months. And when I get back in 9-10 months, I'm going to tear this building down. I'm going to build a house. So you can rent it for 9 to 10 months. So that's what we did. The guy was super cool, didn't bother us or anything. He was gone most of the time. It was his wife we just paid the rent to. I would walk out. They had like a cow or like 2 cows out there. And they had like this barrel that they would put the feed in. And I would just go out there and I'd put the check in the barrel and then put the lid on. And then she would take it. They were really cool. They were nice people and stuff. But this house was, again, it was along the highway. So we always got a lot of people coming to the house and knocking on the door. And like their car would break down or had a flat tire. And they would always ask if they could use the phone, It was like once a week this would happen. Happened all the time. But I was still with my girlfriend, Miss Scarlett. She moved in to this home with me. And then I always seemed to have one of my friends who always wanted to be a roommate at some point. But again, my friends were not always the greatest at paying rent on time or helping to pay bills on time. And neither was I. We were always just trying to keep the lights on and the water working, and just trying to make next month's rent while we were trying to, party and do all that stuff. But at this house, a lot of partying, a lot of smoking weed. And this is kind of where the started picking up some other drug habits at this place. My drug of choice was meth, and this is kind of where it started. Now, my ex-girlfriend, Miss Scarlett, she did not participate in any of the drug use stuff. She did like to drink every once in a while, have margaritas, pina coladas. I remember was one of her favorites. But we always tried to hide it from her and stuff. But this is kind of where it started, and my mom would come by and she'd be like, man, the house smells like marijuana in there. And I'm like, well, of course it does, Like, you wanted me to leave out of the house, and this is what you're going to get. So, but I still worked. I still maintained my job and everything. And then I said we didn't really have no big stories. We kind of just tried to keep to ourselves, and we kind of kept the house clean. We lived off of the dollar menu at McDonald's and Jack in the Box and 7-Eleven sodas. I mean, we were dirt poor. I mean, again, we were just barely getting by, keeping the lights on and stuff like that. But it was our first place. I mean, that's all you could kind of expect. I mean, we had hand-me-down furniture. This place was kind of out in the country, and it was a mobile home, so we had a mouse problem. So we got a cat to help catch the mice. But again, we had shitty furniture. It was not nice. But eventually, so the guy, he comes back, and he's like, okay, he's coming back. He graduated from the correctional officer place. This is the homeowner. So I had to find another place to live. And I ended up getting an apartment. Me and a buddy, we got an apartment in town, and Miss Scarlett was with us. And it was a 2-bedroom apartment. It was I believe it was East Hazelwood in Lemoore, California, which was not the nicest place. It was East Hazelwood, as we used to call it. But the apartment complex had a laundry room and a pool, and it was a small apartment. I mean, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, super small kitchen. The little backyard that we had actually was backed up to a elementary school, so the elementary school was right there. So during the day, you would see kids running around doing whatever. I still worked at the Metro 4. Miss Scarlett, she worked at the other movie theater, the one at the mall, the nice one, I guess, or the newer one. I don't know why she picked the movie. Maybe just because we would have like similar schedules. Because when you work for a movie theater, you work late. Like movie theaters aren't open super early in the morning, but they do close down at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. So she worked there, and this is also the time of my super famous story of the Britney Spears movie and the Super Troopers movie, where a section, as I mentioned, the movies were filmed, and a section of the Super Troopers movie got put into the Britney Spears movie somehow. And but that happened at Miss Scarlett's movie theater, and that was a real funny one. I think that was I told that story on the Rank My Movies podcast that we used to do back in the day. But my drug habit and the partying continued on. My drug habit pretty much for probably had a good year or two of my drug habit, and Miss Scarlett did not like it. I was talking to my therapist the other day. She was like, so how did you kind of find yourself going down this road? And I thought, well, I think just at the time I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have a plan. I didn't go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I said I just didn't have a purpose. I just was just kind of wandering, just floating, just getting by, with no real goal in mind, and also I think at this time my parents were having some issues amongst themselves, and maybe I slipped through the cracks a little bit. Maybe they were a little more focused on doing their thing and dealing with their problems. And, I kind of maybe slipped through the cracks a little bit. Not that I'm blaming them at all. I'm just saying that, maybe it's just a possibility, So my drug habit got pretty bad, which, the drug habit wasn't that bad because, I worked late, and you work a lot of nights, so you stay up late. So the drugs kind of helped that part. But basically, it got so bad at one point that that my body just kind of I didn't OD or anything. I wouldn't call it an overdose, but I would say that my body just needed a break from all the partying and the drugs and staying up late or not getting enough sleep and not getting enough to eat, not drinking enough water. And my body just kind of said, enough's enough, and forced me to stop. Basically, I couldn't hold anything down. I threw up constantly, super dehydrated. Eventually went to the emergency room. And I was telling my therapist, this might have been the time when maybe, my parents really kind of realized what kind of problem I had at the time. And I'm maybe 19, 20 years old. I'm not 21 yet. And, Miss Scarlett was there. She was by my side. And it was just kind of a big sort of shameful moment for myself. I was telling my therapist, I don't necessarily, obviously I regret doing it, but I also look back and think that it was definitely a life lesson that I learned. I learned very quickly. I was so sick. I was bedridden for almost 2 weeks, and I basically stopped, the drugs cold turkey right then and there. Never touched it again. Even now, if I smell anything that kind of smells like it, I almost instantly throw up in my mouth a little bit. It's like it had that sort of effect on me. But after that, Miss Scarlett kind of, I think Miss Scarlett ended up, breaking up with me and sort of leaving. And I think at the time it hurt really bad because we were high school sweethearts. We were together for a couple of years. But I think for her, she just got kind of tired of it, of, me doing whatever I wanted or partying too much and doing this, doing that. And I think back now and I think, bless her heart, she put up with me for so long. So Miss Scarlett, you know who you are. If you're listening, if you ever hear this, bless your heart. I do apologize for all the crazy, terrible things that I did. But I think she's doing perfectly fine now. I think we both kind of are. So, but the Metro 4, so I had, that was my drug problem. That was kind of probably the lowest point in my life, at that moment. I went from the highest of highs on the cruise to very quickly in another year or two at the lowest point of my life. But I continued working at the Metro 4, and I always worked hard. I always had a pretty good work ethic. At the Metro 4, again, every time it kind of felt like I wanted to leave and go get another job or do something else, they would always promote me. So I became like an assistant manager. And we had a lot of fun at the Metro 4. I made a lot of friends, still talk to some people. One of my employees, she went to Hollywood to become an actress and stuff. And she did some acting. I think she does a lot of makeup now. I should get her a hold of my son, and they can talk a little bit. But she always promised me that when the first time she was going to be on TV, she was going to let me know, and she did. It was quite a few years later, she called me and said, hey, I'm going to be on TV, and I watched it, and she's got IMDb page and everything. Then I got some other friends, that I made, like sort of lifelong friends. But we had a party a lot there at the Metro 4. So we always had fun. It's a movie theater, right? You can't take your job too seriously. But we always had a good time. So what would happen is the Metro 4. So again, when you would get these movies, right, and you would put them together, you have to tape them together, basically, like legitimately, to make them, so like a 2-hour movie was like 6 small reels, okay? So they were like, each reel was probably like 20 minutes long, and you have to tape them together. And then what you would do is at midnight that night, we would always watch it to make sure that it was put together correctly, all right? Now, at Miss Scarlett's movie theater, they paid their employees to stay and watch it, okay? At the Metro 4, we didn't pay people, but we would invite the employees and a +1 to come down, and we can all watch the movie together before it comes out. But these also, when I was the manager there, these were kind of like more like parties, So there was always smoking some weed upstairs, and when I was doing drugs, we would do a little bit of drugs upstairs, and then we'd be drinking and doing that stuff, and it was always kind of a party, and it was always kind of a fun ordeal, and they came kind of legendary. But so the Metro 4, we had the best midnight showings. And then movie theaters kind of caught on about these midnight showings, and they started selling tickets for them. Because they if the movie came out on Friday, well, at midnight, it's now Friday. So that's how they started doing those like secret midnight showings and started selling tickets for it and stuff. But for us, we would watch the movie, and we'd be loud and having a good time and all that stuff. It was always the midnight showings were always a lot of fun. We even had I remember I had an employee who had a girlfriend, but she was like 16 or 17 years old, and I didn't know this, but she had like ran away with him. Like she left her parents' house and was living with this guy. And again, he might have been 18, 19 years old. I don't even remember. But I remember the general manager of the movie theater, he called me and was like, hey, the police are looking for her and this guy. And, there's like a missing person for her. And if they show up, please call the police. So I was like, all right. Of course, they showed up because they wanted to come to the Metro 4 midnight showing. And so I had to call the police, and they came in. They just came and were like, oh, okay, the gig is up. They just went. But what's funny about the Metro 4, I've worked there a long time. There's a lot of good fun stories. But I remember that a couple years later, when I was working in minor league baseball, I hadn't worked at the Metro 4 for 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. I went back to watch a movie. And I walked in. I was by myself. I totally go to a movie by myself. But I walked in, and the guy working there was like, I was like, oh, let me get one for, I don't even remember what movie it was. And let me just get one. He was like, no, man, you're good. You can go in. And I was like, really? He leans into me and he goes, you're a legend here. And I was like, oh, okay. So people still know who I am. So I'm the legend at the Metro 4. But yeah, we always had a lot of fun there. And like, I remember one of the things we used to do was the new kids, we would the new employees, we would kind of initiate them. And so in the movie theaters, like in the actual theaters, when you turn the lights off, it is pitch black. You cannot see anything. And we would always kind of tell them about the ghosts at the Metro 4 and all this stuff. And then we would make them go down. You would have to run down and touch the screen at the movie and then run back. One, without tripping over seats and all this stuff. But it was so dark. It was so scary when you would do it. That's what we used to make the new employees do to initiate them. So, so the Metro 4 was a lot of good time. So I'm at so we can go back to the apartment. Miss Scarlett had left, and my one roommate, who was kind of a terrible roommate, he ended up moving out because he couldn't stand me anymore or whatever. But I always seem to have found another roommate, and I did. I found a roommate. His name, I'll say his name. His name was Lauren. He's a good friend of mine still. If I see him, I'll say hi. I was in his wedding and stuff. And he moved in, and Lauren always had an interesting job. When he first moved in, he was a driver for like a paramedic team. Like he drove the ambulance. And then he worked at like the sheriff, like the jail, like a correctional officer at the jail. And then like he worked for his dad doing like appliances. His dad sold appliances, so he would like go and install them for him and stuff. I don't know, but Lauren was a super funny guy. He loved to drink and that kind of stuff. And he was always a good spin. He was good to have around because I was kind of probably depressed and shamed, and he was always so joyful and happy, and probably kept me on the straight arrow. So it was good to have him around, and he probably doesn't know this unless he listens to this, that his presence being around me is super more appreciated than he probably knows. And then let me think. So we used to have some parties over at the apartment in East Hazelwood. I remember one it got a little out of hand. Yeah, I think we just had a bunch of people from the Metro 4 and just a bunch of friends. They just came over, and this is a small apartment. And if you're having a party, like everyone in the apartment complex knows about it. And, like the apartment manager came over and knocked on the door, and there were so many people that it was like, they was a little bit out of control. We kind of got our hands slapped for that one, but it was a good party and stuff. This is also about the time when I met my ex-wife, who we'll call her Mrs. White. Okay. So Mrs. White was friends with with a couple of, so my friends had girlfriends, and she was kind of friends with some of them, some of my roommates and just some of my close friends. So she was going to college at the time at Fresno State, and I was working at the Metro 4 in my small apartment. And I might have been just there by myself at this point, in between roommates or whatever. My friends all kind of got the idea. It was like some sort of holiday weekend, I remember, like President's Day or something. And it was like, everyone had Monday off. And I usually had Sundays and Mondays off. And we were like, okay, well, let's go out drinking. Even though it was like a Sunday, but no one had school or work on Monday because it was a holiday. So they all decided we're all going to go out to drink, and Miss White was going to come because she was friends and it was a holiday weekend. She was in town, whatever. So we all go out and we're going out drinking and having a good time. And back in the day, so I must have turned 21 at this point. Yeah. We were out drinking at the bars, just getting really hammered. We drank hard when we were 21. And the after party, we were like, okay, we're going to go back to Brandon's apartment because I think that's where we all met anyways. Everyone's cars were there and stuff. And so we went back and we're just, all drunk and having a good time. And Mrs. White was, I don't know where she was. And they were like, oh, her friends were like, oh, she went to go lay down on your bed. Maybe, you want to go, you can go in there and check on her. And I was like, all right, I'll go in and check on her. So I walk in and it's dark and she's just like kind of passed out on the bed. And I put my hand down kind of next to her. And I'm like, hey, and I was like, oh. And Miss White had thrown up all over my bed. And when I could put my hand down to kind of be like, oh, hey, are you okay? I put my hand right in it. Just like it like smushed between my fingers. Oh, God, it was so bad. So then I went back out and I told her friends, like, she yacked all over my bed. Like, she probably drank too much. So then they got her up and got her cleaned up and everything. And, they washed my sheets for me and stuff. They just, because I had the laundry room there the laundry room at the apartment complex. So they cleaned her up, and then you basically, they were just kind of, doing the hold her hair thing while she yacked into my toilet. And I remember, she was like yelling and saying how dirty my bathroom was. It probably was. Well, she was on the floor puking on it, So, so then they, I remember they were like, oh, she obviously can't drive and all this stuff. And I was like, well, just throw her in my bed. Put these other sheets on or whatever. And then I was like, I'm just going to sleep on the couch. And I did. I remember, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember I watched some James Bond movie, on my couch. And then, she woke up the next day and I was like, oh, hey, hi, how you doing? You doing okay? And she was fine. You recover pretty quick when you're 21. But then I was like, okay, well, I'll see you later. And then she left. Right. And then like 2 minutes later, she came back and she knocked on the door and I was like, oh, hey, what's up? What's up, Miss White? And she's like, oh, I forgot to give you a kiss goodbye. And I was like, and she came in and smacked a big one on me. And I was like, this chick had just been puking all night. Definitely hasn't brushed her teeth. And it was like, let me give you a kiss goodbye. And I was like, oh my God. And that is basically the story of how I met Miss White, my ex-wife. So Miss White, she went to the same high school as me and everything, and we knew each other, but we knew of each other, but we never hung out. We didn't really talk. But she was friends with my friends' girlfriends and stuff, so that's kind of how that happened. So I was thinking that I was 21, so I must have had my 21st birthday party. It just made me think of this. So when I was 21. Miss Scarlett was still with me, but we were probably at the ends of our ropes here with each other, or she was with me. But I remember we went to Las Vegas and we stayed at Treasure Island, and it was a good time. Nothing super crazy exciting happened. I know we did a lot of drinking, we did a lot of gambling, we went to a strip club. But other than that, though, I remember we did the stupid thing of like, we're at Treasure Island and let's go down to the Circus or the Sahara down there. And we're like, it's not that far of a walk. And it was like a long walk. And this is June. It's like June 30th. It's like, 112 degrees outside. We were like, man, we regret this. We should have just took a cab. But I remember I went to Vegas for my 21st birthday, staying at the Treasure Island. So after this part, Miss White puking all over my bed and giving me a throw up kiss. We dated for a little bit. And then this was pretty much right after Miss Scarlet had left me. And so we kind of, she was like, she was just kind of my rebound and whatever, But then my roommate Lauren was like, dude, this apartment sucks. And I was like, yeah, it does kind of suck, dude. Like, he was like, let's get a house. Like, let's upgrade this thing here. So I was like, all right, now that sounds like a pretty good idea. And so he found the house. He's like, I found this house. It's in Hanford, so that was the next town over. And my buddy David, the one who went on the cruise with us, was like, yeah, it was a 3-bedroom house. He's like, I'll rent the other room for you. So it was the three of us, and we rented this room in Hanford. And I worked at the Metro 4, and I think at this point maybe Lauren was working for his dad, doing the appliance installation and stuff like that. So we always had like a every once in a while. So when we finally got this house, we would always have we'd always have like a new washer and dryer like every couple weeks, because Lauren would be like, oh, this one's someone got rid of this. This one's better than the one we have. And so we I remember when we got the house, my mom bought us a pretty expensive sofa. It was like microfiber first came out, and it was sectional and recliner. Man, we loved it. It was awesome. But I think maybe that's where we'll kind of stop right here. We'll transition into my house in Hanford, and we'll kind of get into getting out of the Metro 4 or leaving Metro 4 and my next job, and kind of go from there. So thank you for listening. Hope this one was sort of fun. I know there was a little bit of dark points there, but thanks again for listening. You can find this podcast, My Name is Dad, exclusively on Spotify. And till next time.